Quilter Blockheads, welcome back. This is month 2 and it's the second block in month 2, and we'll be making framed plus. Okay, framed plus is really just a lot of little seams. It's sewn together almost like you're just going to construct this, this, and this, and then you put a frame around it, so almost like bordering a quilt. Okay, in your packet, this is what you will have, what's up here. You're going to have strips of 4 different colors. We've added salmon in here, which is kind of makes it more interesting. Okay, from these strips, you're going to cut these pieces. Okay, out of this strip is 1.5 inches wide, and you're going to cut one 3.5 inch by 1.5 inch rectangle and 2 1.5 inch squares. Out of the dark orange, this is a 1.25 inch strip. You're going to cut 2 different size pieces. These are 6.5 inches by 1.25, and these 2 are 5 inches by 1.25. Those are for the frame, so those are at the very end. The salmon strip is 1.5 inches wide, and you're going to cut rectangles that are 1.25 by 1.5. So see, they're not squares, they're little rectangles. Okay, and from the white strip, which is 2.25 inches wide, you need 4 2.25 inch squares. Okay, now you're going to have a little bit of some of these left. Don't throw those pieces away. There's a lot of months to come where you need little pieces that are 1.5 or 1.25 inches. So don't throw the pieces away that you have left. It might save you if you make a mistake cutting in a month to come. You may end up having the piece that you need. So don't throw them away. Keep them in a little bag. All right. To form this, what we're going to do, this is what it's going to be like in your packet. So now we've cut it up, and this is what it's like. And what we're going to do is we're going to lay it out so that it looks like the picture on the directions. So this is what happens. That ends up being your middle column. And then this ends up being the middle of the side columns. Okay, so that's actually the center of the block, and we're going to sew this together like this. We're going to sew these 2 together, we're going to sew these onto the ends of here, and then we're going to sew these to here. So we're going to end up with 3 columns that we're going to sew together, and then we're going to put these on. Like a frame. That's the name framed plus. Okay, so again, 1/4 inch seams are really important, or these blocks are not going to fit together. Even this block itself won't fit together. So first we're going to sew this to this and this to this. Okay? Everything has to match up. You want this to match up really well on these 3 sides. And then again, best if we don't do any air sewing. So we want to line this up so that we start in the fabric. Still not right. Okay. Now we're going to sew this little seam. And remember, pay attention, scant 1/4 inch. And again, I wouldn't sew very quickly because these seams aren't very long. So if you sew too fast, we're going to end up being at the end before we're sure that we even want to be there and that we have our edges together. Okay, now this one to this end. And again, lined up on 3 sides. Take your time, get them lined up. Don't settle for anything other than them being lined up perfectly. Okay, you're seeing that your cutting is really important. Because if they're not cut all the same size, then they're not going to turn out the same size. Okay. Now we're going to press these seams open. Press them flat first, and then press them open. Okay, and if they don't seem to want to lay really flat, use your folding pen if you've got one. And that'll help. Okay, and then check on this side, make sure that everything's laying flat. And we've got to find the snippers because there's all kinds of strings here. Okay, now we're going to sew these two together. Again, get all three sides lined up. And now I'm going to sew these two together, and then we'll press those. I really need a seam ripper or something. Oh. All right. That's better. All right, and we're going to press these two seams open. Those go right here. Okay, now I've got my middle column, so now I'm going to sew this to this, and I'm going to be sure that I keep my seam allowance flat, so I'm going to sew from this side, and I want all my edges together just like before. This is a little bit longer seam allowance. Okay, if you're noticing, I'm pulling my thread out, and I want to hold it back here because I don't want it to get loose and make a mess on the underneath side of my work. So that's why I'm holding it there. Okay. The other thing is, if you're worried that that seam is going to pop up, you can use your seam ripper, or they actually sell little tools for this purpose, to hold that down so that you know that that stays down. Okay, there's that side. And now I have to sew this to the bottom side. So now I've formed a column. So if you have trouble with your machine making a mess on the underneath side of your work, try pulling the thread out and holding it to the back so that the machine can't grab it and make loops underneath. Okay, and I want to make sure that this stays down. Okay, there's one column. Now I need to make this column. And then we're going to get a snipper and snip all these threads off of here. Did you see that? I caught that in my lap. I'm not usually that coordinated. See, I only use the seam ripper long enough to make sure that it feeds under the foot, not till it gets under the needle. Okay, and this one on this side. And I'm excited because this is that fun fabric, and I'm actually getting some of the little green succulents on that are going to show on my white squares. I think that makes this fabric fun as you're sewing to see. Okay, we're going to get a snippers and get rid of a lot of threads here. Hear my high school sewing teacher yelling at me to keep my work clean. Okay, we're going to press these seams open, and I'm noticing that I'm not exactly correct here. So this one I would rip out because see, I'm a little off here and I'm a little off here, and if I adjust that over, it'll be perfect. So let's do this one and we'll deal with that one in a minute. Okay. I'm going to use the folding pen here where it's kind of thick. Alright, that's like that, and I'm going to fix this one because it's not going to come out correctly. Yeah, why don't we stop there and I'll come back and I'll fix this one and we'll be ready to sew the rest together. Go? Yeah. Okay, I fixed my one that was a little bit wonky. I tore it out and shifted it, and now it lines up. So now I've sewn my 3 columns together. One word of warning, be sure that the salmon pieces are on the outside, not on the inside. Okay, and as far as whether to sew with this up or this up, it really doesn't matter because you see you have seams underneath no matter what, and you're going to have to be checking underneath to be sure that your seams are laying open flat. Once you get it sewn together, press these seams flat, press them open. Okay, so here's what that's our frame, or that's our plus. Now we have to add the frame. So we're gonna put a 5-inch piece on the top and bottom and sew that on. So I'm going to sew with this side up because there's where my seams are, and I want to be sure that they lay open flat. And it looks like this fits very nicely. So we're going to go here, and we're going to sew this piece onto here. And I want to keep my edges all together. And I'm sewing with this up so that I can keep my seams opened flat. All right. Keep my raw edges together, and I want these to lay open. And this is a little longer seam. You can sew a little quicker. Okay. And I want my raw edges together all the way to the end. Don't lose your perfect 1/4 inch at the end. All right. Looks good. And this seam I'm going to press toward the dark orange. Okay. The other one goes here. Same thing, all the raw edges together. We're going to sew this seam. That one's a little bit off, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that, and when I sew my other piece on, I'll show you. We'll just use this edge, and that'll be within the 1/4 inch. Okay, so press this, and remember I said we're going to press them toward the dark orange. Okay, and we've got lots of spots where it's kind of thick. Edges always seem to be a problem. All right, now I'm going to make sure on this side it's nice and flat. Okay. Okay, the other thing is I checked to make sure that before I sewed these pieces on, that my square was squared up to 5 inches. So you want to be sure that it's squared up to 5 inches. So what that tells me is probably this piece isn't quite 5 inches. So now I'm going to sew these on. Get rid of some of these strings. And I showed you that this one's a little bit off here, so I'm going to make this line up with the edge of my I'm going to make this closer to being here, and I'm going to let that be off and just let that get caught in my 1/4 inch seam. Lots of adjusting. Don't start till you're sure everything is lined up. Okay. Okay, and again, this one will get pressed out. We might as well sew the last one on so that we have a finished product. So see, I have the same slight problem here, so I'm going to do the same thing. Okay, we're going to press these towards the orange, the dark orange. All right, now should be 6.5 by 6.5. And it is, I'm going to have to trim a little here. So I'm going to get my 6.5 inch square and trim it up just a little bit. All right, so there's our other finished box, framed plus. Okay, again, if you have any problems, remember on the 28th, you can come in from 1 to 7, arrive at 1, 3, 5, and stay and come and get some help. Otherwise, stop in any time. We're here to help you. We hope you are successful this month. If you do have any problems, don't hesitate to come in. Okay, see you next month. This one needs trimming.